Hi guys, welcome to this video about writing informal letters. I'm going to show you in this video how to write an informal letter and how to do that best, and I'll give you some general advice about how to do that. I will also address some common errors now that my class has turned in some letters. I found some mistakes that people tend to make that I'm going to address, and hopefully you won't make when the real test happens. Okay? First off, how do you prepare for writing a letter, an informal one? Here's a few things to keep in mind. Um, First off, start getting organized. Don't just write it on any old paper on the backside of a receipt or anything like that. Get in front of a laptop or computer and write it there, type it there. That way, it's easier for me to receive it and to read it sometimes. Um, and it'll just be a lot neater. Take your time, get organized first, then start on the assignment. Secondly, take your time. I very often read letters and check them, and I spend my time correcting them, providing them with feedback. But the mistakes that I see that were made inside that letter were mostly made because people were really rushing. They didn't want to spend much time on it. And that way, I'm not really providing you real feedback, am I? I'm not really grading anything that's worth what you can do. So make sure to take your time, take it easy, and really show me what you can do with your writing. Yeah, don't rush through it. Thirdly, make sure to read the assignment carefully, and that goes hand in hand with taking your time. Take your time to read the assignment too, so that you can make sure that you're writing everything you should be writing. And secondly, here's a good tip: you can use a lot of the stuff that is inside the assignment already. If certain language is being used in an assignment, you can use that language. Or if a assignment already shows you in what order to write something, you can use that too. So there's a lot of helpful information in the assignment. So read the assignment carefully, okay? Fourthly, if you're not sure about a word or even a spelling of a word, you could use a dictionary. You're allowed to bring a dictionary to the actual test, but when writing one for practice or diagnostically, I recommend you use a dictionary too for two reasons. That's one, if you throw it in Google Translate, sometimes stuff might not translate so well. And secondly, on the real test, you won't be allowed to use Google Translate either. You'll be forced to use an actual dictionary. So if you practice using one, then it'll go a lot easier for you on the real test. Okay? So see if you can get into the habit of using an actual dictionary, then you'll get through searching stuff faster, and it is a very useful tool if you practice using it. Okay? Keep these things in mind before actually starting to write, or hopefully writing like that. Let's move on. Last tip. This is only if the test is, or if the letter is diagnostic, but if it is a diagnostic letter or if it is a practice letter, then accept it as a learning opportunity. If I give you feedback, if I give you tips, then use those tips. Read it carefully and see if you can use those tips. Is everything I tell you clear? Are certain mistakes I took out of the letter for you? Do you understand why that's a mistake? Do you know how to avoid that mistake in the future? Try and keep these things in mind when you're provided feedback so that you can avoid those things in future letters. And that way, with every single letter you write, you will get a little bit better. Okay? That's what I want to achieve when I give you feedback. I'm not doing it as a hobby, right? I've got other stuff to do. I enjoy teaching way more than just checking letters, but we check those letters for you so that you can get a little better. Okay? So use it. Okay? Now, having prepared you, let's start with the very start of the letter. You've read the assignment, you know what to write, and now it's time to put the first words on paper. What do you do? Well, we start with an address and a date. There's sometimes a bit of confusion about how to write all that stuff down, so I've put one template on the screen here. You just start with your street name and your home number, then the postal code and the country, and this is a way to write down the date. Sometimes there's different versions of that, also depending on whether you're talking about English or American. I think it's best to just pick one to stick with, and this is a good one. So there you go. Obviously change that to 2020, and then this is a good way of putting down the address and the date. Mind you that this is your address. You don't need to put the recipient's address on there. Write down your address and today's date. Okay. Mind you that we write months with capitals in English. Okay, so November there, it's with a big letter. Moving on from that, we will get into the actual content of the letter. So you've prepared, you've written down the date and the address. It's time to actually start with the actual letter. What do? Well, still here. You start with dear and then the name. Obviously, it's an informal letter, so it doesn't have to be very formal. But there are still ways of saying hello to people that would not be school appropriate, or is just not a good way of saying hello in an informal letter. So, best way, just say dear with a capital D and then the name of the person you're writing to. Don't forget the comma. Okay? That's just the best way to start a letter. You'll never be wrong that way, so you might as well get in the mood for it. You may then start your actual letter with a capital letter. I believe it's different in Dutch, but the very first sentence of your letter after the salutation can just be a capital letter, just a big letter. Okay? Sometimes I'd write, or I see people that wrote and they just dive right into it and they start writing about the stuff they want to write about right away. But it's nice, just polite, to start with a short intro. So tell the person where you're writing. And it would also be nice if you just ask them how they are. So you could say something like, "Thank you for your last letter. I really enjoyed it. How are you doing?" That would be a great start before you start getting into other stuff that's part of the letter. The assignment, the writing assignment, will often ask you to say certain things. Like you need to mention certain things to score all the points for the test. Because of that, it would be handy to write in paragraphs by just making small pieces of text dedicated to each part of the test. That way you can make sure that everything that needs to be in there is in there, and you can read through it very carefully. And it's just a helpful tip. It's not, you don't need to do it, but it's a good way of making sure that everything that's in there is in there properly. So you could work with easy paragraphs. Okay? As you've written all that and you've written everything that needs to be in there, you've got some paragraphs, you think you've got the capitalization right. Let's talk about some things that I've noted people do wrong quite a lot, but that you can keep in mind by watching this video and remembering it for future practice letters as well. So here's a few common errors. I notice a lot of people, first off, that write the letter I for ick with a small letter. When you're typing, you can go very fast, and sometimes people don't remember it or pay attention to it, but make sure that when you say ick or I, it's always a big letter I, okay? Never a small one. Sometimes I notice that people have just not taken their time, have not read the assignment carefully, and not everything that's in the video, or in the letter, is in there. So make sure when you are finished to read the assignment one more time and then read through your letter to make sure that everything that needs to be said is said by you. Okay? This is a mistake I see a lot, and you see it on the internet a lot as well. It's a difference between your and your. There's two different ways of spelling it. You've got your, which is possession, bezit. When you want to say something is yours, you could say your home is nice. When you want to say that someone is something, so you are, you could shorten that to your, like this. It's just a shorter way of saying you are. But you could say you're great. But if you wrote that you're with that, then that would start to look a bit silly. That would just be very confusing. So make sure to keep those apart. Your is for bezit, and when you spell it like your, it means you are. Okay? There's different spellings there. Keep that in mind. Another mistake I've seen people make a lot is that they make very long sentences and they don't use any commas. Now, I could explain to you how commas work, but there's many different ways in which commas work, and it can get rather difficult, especially when we're just starting out now with writing informal letters. So another tip I would give you is to just keep it shorter. Right? Write more short sentences. If your sentence is getting very, very long, there's a big chance that you're making a comma mistake somewhere, maybe. So look and see if you can't make that sentence a little bit shorter to make sure you're not making any mistakes. Okay? I've seen more people make mistakes when they made really, really long sentences than I've seen people that annoyed me with many short sentences. So just keep it all a little bit shorter, okay? which goes hand in hand with the final point. I see a lot of people trying to make really difficult but really beautiful sentences, but if you do that, you do make it very difficult on yourself, and you might be using grammar that I've not even explained to you yet, or you've never used before, because you're thinking in Dutch and you're thinking of really nice sentences to use, but it is really difficult. So, as a final point, to get as high a grade on the test as you can, keep it all a little bit simpler so you don't make any mistakes. When you're practicing, go ahead and get out of your comfort zone and make difficult sentences, and I can give you feedback and tell you, oh, this was great, but this one you need to keep a bit shorter and simpler. Go ahead. But for the real test is not the testing grounds. So keep it shorter and simpler on the real test, okay? So you don't make any mistakes. Finally, when you've read everything of the assignment, you've gotten the address, you've gotten the start, you wrote the letter, there's just one thing you need to do, and that's to round the letter off, and there's a few ways of doing that. All the way at the end, when possibly you've written a bit of a concluding sentence as well, like, I hope to hear from you soon. After that, in Dutch, we would say groetjes. Do not say greetings. I keep seeing greetings. Greetings, translated, just means something like gegroet. You don't want to end a letter with the word gegroet. You look a bit weird, like you're a medieval knight or something. You're not a medieval knight. You're just you're a Marnix student, and we expect the best of you. So don't say greetings. Say any of these options. There are more, especially when you're writing informally. There's many ways you could properly end a letter, but these three, kind regards, love, or much love, are great ways, and you'll never be wrong with those. Make sure, though, that you don't put your name right after kind regards. It always goes underneath, okay? That's the best ways to conclude a letter. If you've followed all these tips and this format, you'll be sure to get a good letter. Just mind your grammar, mind your spelling, look up words in your dictionary when you're not sure how to write them, and keep it short and simple. That's the best way to write an informal letter. Make sure to go to your teacher for any other questions you might have, and always turn in as many diagnostic or practice letters as you can, because that's the way that we can see how you're doing and we can give you tips and feedback. And if you do something with those tips, do something with that feedback, you'll be sure to get a better letter in the second one you turn around. So keep turning them in, keep using the feedback, and thank you for watching this video.